A painting that started as a shift in my process got interrupted by a serious accident and months of recovery. And when I returned to it, it became less about finishing an artwork and more about documenting that whole period of change. After my last painting, I had this feeling that I needed a shift. Not irritation, just a push to move away from the traditional way I usually work. I didn't want to repeat the same safe, predictable structure. So this time, I started with something different. This, the frame itself. Before the subject, before the colors, before anything, I chose this odd shape. That's why you'll see me working at two different frames simultaneously, something that felt inconvenient. So I thought, fine, let me start with something I've wanted to do for a while, a portrait of an Odissi dancer. I reached out to a brilliant dancer from Bangalore. She agreed, and she was excited to be part of it. That was funny because even I didn't know what this painting was going to become. I only knew one thing. I wanted it to be rooted in where I come from, the culture and heritage. And if anything represents that strongly, it's Odissi. And if Odissi represents anything deeply, it goes straight back to where it all began, the Puri temple. That became my anchor. The dancer, the posture, the entire idea would revolve around that energy. So I started, layer by layer, slowly. Then there was a catch. Most people expect some artistic reason, some philosophical twist. But the truth is blunt. I was hospitalized. And not for a small injury. A part of my leg and a part of my waist got dragged under a moving bus. A stupid, brutal accident. The kind that interrupts your life without warning. The doctors told me I was lucky. Lucky that I could walk or even stand. Lucky that everything wasn't worse. And honestly, they're right. Because when you're lying in a hospital bed, looking at metal rods and painkillers, and your own body refusing to cooperate, painting is the last thing on your mind. I'm not the best at keeping up with friends and family, but during this phase, they showed up in a way I didn't expect. They kept me grounded, reminded me that this wasn't the end, and pushed me to get back on my feet as quickly and as safely as I could. Eventually, after nearly half a year, I was back to my studio. With a limp. With hesitation. I wasn't sure if I'd ever get into that flow again. But here's the part that surprised me. I didn't feel overwhelmed. I didn't feel pressure. I didn't feel the old overthinking. I just remembered the sketch, the base structure, the raw idea, the part of the process that mattered. Everything else, the confusion, the fear, the doubt, all of it had disappeared. I knew I couldn't sit for hours. But I started again, piece by piece. And because everything in my life had changed, the painting changed too. I added elements from Konark, the wheel, the structure, the motifs. Because just a few days before the accident, I was in Konark with my family. That memory stuck in my mind, and when I looked at the painting again, it fit too perfectly. It didn't even feel like I was adding a new idea. It felt like something that was always meant to be there. And then came the colors. I didn't want to overthink them. I didn't want to polish every shade. I went with strokes. That became a kind of signature in this piece, a mark of how I approached it after everything. The entire process became slower, heavier, but more meaningful. I wasn't painting to impress. I wasn't painting to finish. I wasn't painting because of pressure. I was painting because I wanted to see if I could still do it. If I could still build something after everything got interrupted. It took time. It took frustration. It took a lot of readjusting. Some days I couldn't sit for even 5 minutes. Some days I felt a rush and worked longer. But the point is, I showed up again and again, even when it felt pointless, even when it felt hard and when everything hurt. And then one day, it was complete. Nearly a year after the first stroke. When I stood in front of it, there wasn't a dramatic realization, no grand cinematic moment, just a quiet acknowledgement. A simple feeling that this piece carried everything: the excitement, the uncertainty, the accident, the frustration, the recovery, the slow rebuilding. This piece became more than a composition. It became a timeline of that year.